So welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us. I hope everyone's staying safe and healthy and as sane as possible. I'm Emily Petrolia. I'm the president of ESP Advisors, and my co-host is Rennie Myers. Rennie, would you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hey everyone, my name is Rennie Myers. I work with the Division of Ocean Sciences at the National Science Foundation supporting. Great. Thank you, Emily. Um, if you wouldn't mind everybody going through and introducing yourself and your organization and the role that you play in providing ocean technology or sustained ocean observations, that would be great.
Okay, cool. So my name is Deborah Hernandez. I am the director of SOCORA, the Southeast Coastal Ocean Observatory Regional. So we operate in the coast and oceans along North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and all of Florida, including the western Gulf of Mexico. And primarily we engage with communities and other stakeholders to understand needs for coastal and ocean data and information. With that as our guide, we support sustained collection of observations from a number of technologies: buoys, coastal stations, radar, webcams, gliders, drones, and the list is ever expanding. Right now we're supporting 20 radar, 13 buoys, 6 coastal stations, 7 webcams, and have gliders flying about half the year. Several of these assets have records that are approaching 20 years, so increasingly important for monitoring the changes that we've not seen before in the ocean. We also host a regional data portal that makes all this information accessible. It provides analytical capabilities and also enables people to connect to others in the field. So in summary, we work with the private sector, federal government, and a shout out to NOAA, who's our primary funder, academia and other public and private sector institutions to meet regional needs for coastal data and information.
My name is Rich Lawson. I'm the CEO at IOSHA, and that's the International Ocean Science and Technology Industry Association. We are a 501c6 trade association that works primarily supporting the science sectors of the blue economy in not so much the oil and gas part of the industry, but more on the science side. So we're about to get into virtual conference land here in June alongside Chow with our Blue Tech Expo event. So it's going to be interesting doing that. And we have a range of members that go from larger organizations all the way down to startups. So we try to provide a variety of programs to support those organizations and kind of have a bit of a niche working between industry and government, facilitating collaboration and communication between those two parts of our industry.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Miller, and I work with Fugro, and we're a leading geodata company that operates globally, but we have a significant presence in the U.S. We have around 1,100 employees with offices in 10 states. We're typically involved in the acquisition, the analysis and advice of geodata, and that spans land and marine, but obviously for this topic, focusing on the marine, and we're involved with the collection of geophysical data, hydrographic data, marine geotechnical information, metocean data, and then providing advice, analysis on those data for our clients. We work in the private sector. We are a private sector company, but we work for private sector and public sector clients. In the private sector area, it's primarily in the energy and infrastructure space. And then in the public sector, we work very heavily with NOAA, as well as other agencies in the coastal zone and inland estuarine areas as well. So my role is government interface for the company and to develop our long-term partnerships and relationships around collaboration and collaborative science with government agencies. And I'm also Fugro's lead on two global initiatives that I think are relative to this discussion, which is Seabed 2030 and the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable
A little bit
Development.
of back and forth. Thank you. I'm Tom Mitchell from Seabird Scientific. We're a oceanographic sensors and systems company. We support long-term ocean observing in a number of different areas, including physical parameters. We have strength and conductivity, temperature and depth. And then with a broad variety of chemical parameters and biogeochemical parameters, some with measurements using colorimetry, but others using active optics and measuring things like dissolved oxygen, pH, nitrate, and then some very strong offerings in the fluorescence and backscatter area. So we tend to play in areas where there's long-term deployment needed, certainly over a year. For many of the Argo programs, we strive to have more than 5 years of accuracy on our CTDs for the Argo floats that are deployed. We've become very involved with supporting the Argo program, both in the core Argo and some of the manufacturers, and Teledyne will speak next, for some of their uses, but also for the Deep Argo program, which is just starting, and the biogeochemical Argo program, which is beginning to grow quite significantly. I run the sales and marketing team, but my background is in technology. I ran the Seabird Electronics R&D for a number of years. And so I'm actually the principal investigator on a NOP grant. And so very fortunate to receive funding through NOAA and administrated through the ONR NOP program right now for improving the biogeochemical sensors used on Argo floats. And so we currently are working with University of Washington as well as MBARI to improve the oxygen sensor for in-air calibration and then get additional capabilities for lifting an OCR 504, an ocean color radiometer on the package, as well as adding to the stability and reliability of the pH sensor. So look forward to talking to more people about the long-term ocean observing.
So
Thank
as Rennie mentioned, Dan Shropshire, Teledyne. I'm the vice president for our sales and marketing team, also do product development. So in the breakout later sessions, if anyone's interested in sharing ideas or thoughts on how we can help improve what you do and how we deliver these sensors to depth, that would be really interesting to me, and just understand sort of, what else we could be looking forward to in the future. We currently, most people know Teledyne. We're primarily manufacturer of many different oceanographic items. Specifically in my area, I'm responsible for our vehicles team, so that includes our profiling floats. So the ones that Thomas just mentioned, that we have many different oceanographic sensors on from Seabird and RBR. Greg Johnson's on from RBR as well. So two of our really good partners there in bringing this data to the community. But our profiling floats we've sold for 30, 40 years. Delivering, there's two different styles really. We have a 2,000 meter float, which takes the CTD sensors or other biogeochemical sensors down to depth and park at a depth and measure for some period of time. And then those floats surface after 10 days or so of mission parameter or mission time, uplink their data to Iridium, and then that data is obviously available for everybody to download and use. So I think most everyone on this call is probably pretty familiar with those floats. Thomas also mentioned the Deep Apex, so that's another float that Teledyne has developed over the last few years. So we have a capability of delivering those same sensors, the CTDs at least down to 6,000 meters now, and profiled all the way down to that depth. So that's a fairly new project, and we're very excited about the Deep Argo missions and supporting those as well. So we manufacture both the standard CTDs, the deep profiling CTDs, and the biogeochemical floats as well. Our other core product for this industry and for the team here is really the glider, the Slocum glider, of which most, again, people very familiar with. Multiple hundreds now out in the ocean doing profiling. And so we work a lot with the IUS groups and supporting them and doing glider development, deliveries, demos, and working with that whole team on doing measurements for the ocean as well. One of the big jobs we do there is for the OOI initiative, so working with Woods Hole in Oregon State in particular on providing gliders to those observatories to get the data off of the moorings. So those moorings are all subsea, and the gliders interrogate the modems on those moorings and get the data off and pull that off and then telemeter that data back to shore. So that's a big part of what we do. And then obviously other parts of Teledyne, we also make ADCPs for current profiling and mooring measurements and other sensors as well. So we have a number of different technologies which we bring into this space. And we're super happy to be part of this community and part of IOSHA, which Rich runs. So thanks for having us. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks everyone for that. I think that's really helpful to get a landscape of what for the range of technologies and communities there are leveraging those technologies. Many of them are related to federal grants, many of them are not in different interagency partnerships. Would you guys mind talking a little bit about how COVID has impacted your operations, but also how your interaction with these long-term, high-investment federal projects has either helped pull you through this period or has proved to provide other complications?
So the good news is many of our data streams are continuing to flow. 85% of our funding goes to trying to collect ocean and coastal data and get it to people who need it. So in that way, COVID has not had a significant impact. However, the longer it draws out, the bigger the impacts. I'll do two quick stories. There's a buoy off of Charleston, South Carolina that stopped reporting. A National Weather Service forecaster actually contacted our operator, which was the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and highlighted how critical that data was for their marine forecast, and was asking any estimate on when we could get that data flowing again. The operator was able to use that request to get a waiver from his institution's prohibition on travel and get to Charleston, get out in a small boat and do a temporary repair. Had a similar situation off of the West Florida shelf. A couple of buoys are not reporting that are operated by the University of South Florida. Springtime is when harmful algal bloom forecasters determine if offshore conditions are conducive to a major red tide. Without those buoys reporting, that forecast has a lot more error bars around it than it normally would. Unfortunately, we need a major ocean-going vessel to get out and repair those, so they remain down. So in summary, COVID's highlighted three issues for us. One is a supply chain issue. There have been delays in receiving new equipment, new radar in particular, delays in getting sensors that needed to be recalibrated back, and I'm sure some of the other partners will talk about their operations. We've got access issues, even if operators can travel. A lot of our assets on the coast are located in parks, which have been shut down, so they can't be maintained. And then, as I've already said, if we need a ship to do maintenance, that's just really not feasible right now. So that's a major issue.
Thank you, Deborah. Rich?
So on our side, obviously we're an association, so a little bit different from the service and product providers here. But really, from an administration or an operations standpoint for our organization, really not much of a change. What does concern us, though, is that all associations and nonprofits are really focused about convening, publishing, and offering places for people to network. And with the interruptions to the conference schedule in 2020 has been pretty staggering. That's occupying a great deal of our time. How do you? We're a support organization like our other sister societies, and serve a fairly important role in the industry, particularly in bringing innovation forward, sales and marketing channels, scholarly publishing, and all those things. So I think all of us are trying to figure out, in the absence of actually being able to convene people, how does that happen? How are the products and services that we offer delivered in truly uncertain times like this? So we're in uncharted waters, and we're trying to figure it out as we go along here.
Thank you, Rich. David?
Yes. Okay. So I would say kind of two stories or two parts here. Like most people here, a significant portion of our organization with the support staff found themselves obviously having to work from home and perform their jobs from home using technology like we're using here now. But we're a service company, and you know our operations are critical, and we've been able, thankfully, to maintain business continuity through this challenging time. And we own and operate a fleet of ships. Those ships contain remotely operated vehicles, autonomous surface vehicles, underwater autonomous vehicles, and through some very careful planning and testing, quarantining, we've been able to come up with strategies that have allowed us actually to maintain our operations. All of our ships continue to operate, albeit in a very challenging environment, and getting people on and off ships, the necessary quarantining of people before they embark a ship, as they get off a ship. I mean, the testing, it's all very challenging, but thankfully, so far we've been able to keep our staff healthy and our vessels clear of COVID-19. We just started a major multi-vessel operation for Shell in the Northeast around a wind farm development there. And we just also recently started a program for NOAA near Apalachicola, Florida, for hydrographic charting there. So I am happy that we're able to continue to operate. We've been able to introduce some new technology to limit or reduce the number of staff that we actually have to get on vessels. And I'll probably elaborate on that in a subsequent question.
Thank you so much. And I think part of the challenges, especially with these sustained ocean systems, is that when you're trying to quarantine the crew members who are going to be operating the vessels, but the trips that they're making to do some of these turnaround projects might be relatively short. It doesn't always make sense to do that full 14-day quarantine before they're on the vessel, but at the same time, you have to make sure that the vessel safety and health of the crew isn't compromised. So it sounds like...
Yeah, so Seabird Scientific has sites globally, but our main site is in Bellevue, Washington. And so unfortunately, we're only about 15 minutes away from the first site of significant death in the U.S. from COVID, so the Kirkland, Washington elder care home. So we took early and aggressive actions to keep our workers safe. And so anyone who could work from home was working from home very early on. And then we had, social distancing implemented within manufacturing and then staggering shifts. But unfortunately, within Washington State, the incident rate kept rising as well as the death rate. And so Governor Inslee implemented a stay home, stay healthy order. And currently it's in place through May 31st. There are some ways of working through that. And so Seabird Scientific is allowed to consider its workers as essential workforce if we support what are considered essential business. And for many of our long-term observation customers, they do fall into that. So there's things to do with transportation, energy, food and agriculture, water and wastewater treatment, and the defense industrial base. But Argo fits into, for example, weather forecasting, which is needed for transportation and maritime. Much of the CTD work that we do at some level is the data is used by the U.S. Navy, who also supports oceanographic forecasting for the operational Navy. So we've been able to work with some closely held partners and keep some of the factory open. I think there's between 8 and 10 people within the facility at any one time, and the vast majority of that is to keep the Argo program going. We are in discussions with NOAA to try to get some letters of support where we could improve upon that and make sure there's no gap in core Argo, in BioArgo, or in the Deep Argo programs. And Teledyne's been very flexible when we've worked with them, given some of our manufacturing shifts. Second impact has really been on R&D. So we have had the R&D teams move and work from home. Some of them actually brought part of their projects home. The oxygen sensor program I described, that's part of the NOP. There's actually mechanical engineers working on it and electrical engineers working on it from home, but it's simply not as efficient as doing it from within the facility. And then lastly, we have a diminished ability to support science. So Seabird Scientific prides itself on having 20 scientists on staff. Our mission is to accelerate this understanding of natural waters, and we simply have less availability of having our scientists interact with customers or interact with the rest of our staff and try to help them learn more about what we're doing. So it's definitely had a significant impact, but we're trying to work around it. And with partners like NOAA, I think we're able to move the needle a little bit. Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas. And Dan.
Yeah, so we've been somewhat fortunate as well. So our manufacturing center is in Massachusetts. We've had a lot of cases here as well, so we've had pretty strict lockdowns, but we are also on that essential list, primarily because we are a government provider. So from that standpoint, and provided the U.S. military, a lot of our business is continues to run because of that. We also actually have a food inspection business that runs out of our factory as well, and that is another one of those key industries. So also is something that puts us on that essential list. So most of the Teledyne businesses in the U.S. at least are fully open. Actually, even our businesses in Denmark, the UK are all fully open. So we've been able to continue to work.
One of the questions I've been hearing a lot from people is, we were already on a trajectory to maybe more automation and more remote data collection and things like that. Do you think COVID-19 changes that trajectory or speeds it up at all? And if so, could you give us some details on that? And I guess we'll go down the line the same way. Deborah, would love your thoughts.
Okay, thanks, Emily. So quickly, a little more about Socorro. We are a small nonprofit. We partner with the IUS program, and I have partners around the country who do what I do. But for Socorro, we're a virtual organization, and we're before COVID. We're 5 FTEs plus a couple part-time people spread across 5 states. Our data management's outsourced. Our board and funded partners are all across the Southeast, and some are international. So we were maybe better equipped than some to make use of these technologies that we're all using every day now to continue our work. I think the main lesson we're taking out of this is around communications. It's easy to get burned out at the end of the day, at the end of the week, if you've been on video chats all day long. One-to-one conversations, picking up the phone has been something we've increased on the staff side to touch our partners and our collaborators, and it seems to be really appreciated. And then the other thing we've done that we never did before, despite being a virtual organization for years, is have virtual happy hours. Just a time dedicated to seeing our workspace at home, to meeting our pets or our kids, and developing those deeper personal connections that I think make our work life a little richer. So that's an important take-home message for me as a leader and as a manager. In terms of how might ocean science and technology shift, and is the trajectory changing, I would say I don't think it's changing. As Emily, you said, as the Admiral highlighted, this trend for more automation, more miniaturization, more capability to be in the ocean and to be in new places with less human hands on, I think is something that will continue. Sort of some lessons, things that need maintenance with ships versus small boats, or not at all, or more vulnerable in these sorts of situations. Aging infrastructure, things that need a lot more maintenance, are again at higher risk in these sorts of events. Understanding our supply chain weaknesses, all of those issues are, I think, key to helping us. Unfortunately, in our new normal, I think even out of COVID, institutions, companies that build resiliency to deal with these situations will be more successful going forward. And so that's a big lesson, again, for me as a manager coming out of this
To ask
event.
you, how has your communication changed with your members and in this time? And I know you're involved with CHOW. Would love to hear, the process of that going virtual. If you have a few minutes to share with us.
Yeah, so that's actually been really interesting. And like Deborah, we're a virtual organization, so we were kind of prepped to do business this way. But what I don't think anybody was ready to sort of deal with was what happened with conferences and so forth. And I've been in association management since the 90s, and everybody's been talking about virtual trade shows and all that sort of stuff. But suddenly you're removing that face-to-face aspect and that personal touch and that personal networking, professional networking side of it, which it's hard to sort of overstate the importance of that, really. And then trying to push that into an environment that's online is really a challenge. And what happened with CHOW, we kind of watched oceanology get postponed, and then Sea Air Space got canceled, and then OTC was postponed and then canceled, and all of a sudden the prospect of having no events in 2020 became something you could have a reasonable discussion about. And we felt, because of our position where we sort of fit in this niche between industry and government, that we had some capability there, and felt increasingly as these things started to happen that, hey, maybe there's something we need to do to support sales and marketing on the industry side. And we were already aligned with CHOW to do the events co-located for the face-to-face, but I called them up and said, what are you guys planning to do? And they said, well, we feel like we don't really have the logistical support to move the conference, and we feel there's a need to have it, so we're going to do it online. And I said, great, that's what we're thinking too. Maybe this is actually an opportunity where we can support each other. And CHOW has enormous reach and a great brand. And, I think we're pretty well known for what we do. And if we were going to be successful in doing something in this completely unknown space, let's do it together and see if we can pull it off. And, it's sort of like, what else is out there to do? I guess there's nothing, or you can try to do something online and really provide a service to people. And that's what we're hoping to do. And I know CHOW's optimistic about it. And the other interesting thing I'll say is that there's been every organization that you can possibly imagine are calling providers of virtual conference software right now. And CHOW had engaged one, was in the contracting phase, and the provider discovered felt they didn't have the staff bandwidth to handle CHOW. So the contract got pulled and the whole process started over again. So, our ability to get information out to our members and potential exhibitors and things like that was a bit contingent on all of these different things coming together, and CHOW finding something that would work for them and us having a virtual conference also. It was tough, but call me on June 10th and I'll let you know how it goes. But it's going to be, and it can potentially change if these kind of platforms are successful. I'm a little worried what might happen in an already kind of bloated conference schedule each year. There's dozens and dozens of conferences, and everybody always complains about it. What if the preferred method becomes some sort of online platform that nobody's really done yet in this industry? So that'll be interesting to watch too. And the final point is, getting back to the members, we heard early on that they had cut travel. I was like, okay, so you can't come. So it's sort of a supply and demand issue to manage also, and it's been fascinating professionally to kind of work through this. So fingers crossed for a great event, and I hope it works for everybody.
I might share a bit of what Rich just said, but in a slightly different way, which I'm finding that our team is more effective and more efficient working from home. The sales team in particular is all spread out. Now, I work with people all over the globe regularly. My staff is in different countries, so we're sort of used to working remotely like that. But I think the use of the technology that we all have on our laptops now is really fascinating to be honest. Making a joke the other day with somebody is I think some of the happiest people right now are the software programmers at Microsoft and these other companies who are now saying, God, see, this stuff works. Finally everybody's actually using it. you're frustrated that the technology really hasn't been adapted. But now that everyone's adapting the technology and using it, you really do see the efficiencies. So we've seen a lot of efficiencies just from running the business, in the sense that conversations are more efficient because we're using chat instead of email or phone. People aren't stopping each other in the hallway to have side conversations. So it's just fascinating, to be honest, to me, to kind of see some of the unexpected impacts of the whole thing. So we're finding that it's benefited us in that way, and then it's tough not to be in the office every day from a manufacturing standpoint. But we've really been able to keep up pretty well. I would say, we're right now, we've actually had one of the best quarters we've had history. So things surprisingly are going very well for us. It's been tough personally. There's a lot of things with staff and difficulties, et cetera. That's obviously hard to watch. But I will say, just from a professional and a business standpoint, we're actually doing really well. And there will likely, I'm sure, be things that we learn from this that we will carry on with regards to communication and planning and tools we're using, et cetera. So yeah, it's interesting, that's for sure.
Thank you again to everyone for joining. A reminder to please provide feedback and thoughts for topics for next time. There's a lot to chew on here, so I really appreciate it. ESPadvisor.com/oceanblue is in the chat.